As you may or may not know, JpegDigger is a carver, a raw file recovery tool. So this means it ignores file system data, and instead it looks for characteristics specific to a file type and tries to detect files that way. It scans the drive for specific magic bytes and stuff like that. JpegDigger also uses entropy to decide if it will even look at data, but that's beyond this video. Well, the drawbacks, there are drawbacks to carving for files. One of them being that file names are not recovered, because file names are a property of the file system. And another drawback for carving is things like false positives. I mean, you scan the drive for specific sequences of bytes to say, okay, this might be a file that we're looking for, but these are not unique. So such a signature may be detected even if it's not related to the file type we're looking for. So that's false positives. False positives can also result in corrupt files. So, for example, a raw scanner thinks it detected the start of a JPEG file and will start recovering it. Well, in fact, it's not a JPEG file, and when you try to open it, it turns out to be corrupt. Let's look at my list. Yeah. Raw scanners, especially the ones scanning for photos, tend to recover thumbnails as separate files. If we look, for example, at a RAW photo or a JPEG photo, these embed thumbnails or sometimes even previews, which are lower resolution, lower quality variants of the photo. So if you scan a drive in our example for photos, for deleted or lost photos from an SD card or a flash drive, once you've recovered files, you'll run into a number of problems. No file names, so you will have to open files to see if it's a file you wanted back or not. False positives, you open the file and it turns out to be not a JPEG. Corrupt files, so you open a file and it turns out only a portion was recovered, or it's all garbled or whatever, it's a corrupt file. You open a file and it turns out to be a thumbnail, which is, in my opinion, useless. And you open a file to discover it's the one that you recovered 100 files previous as well, so it's a duplicate file. So a JpegDigger tries to do a number of things to reduce some of the drawbacks of raw file carving or scanning. And one of the things I recently added was a option to filter duplicate files. And it's enabled by default. Here it is. Now if we look at some of the, while we're here, of the other settings that affect the problems that we just discussed, you'll see that the default is that JpegDigger skips corrupted files. Of course, it must be able to detect the corruption, but it tries to. it filters duplicate files. So you should get one you should not get double files. And another thing is the minimum resolution. So even if a thumbnail or a smaller file floats around somewhere, it will be ignored. Now if you, for example, are looking for, suppose you're scanning a hard drive and you want your full resolution JPEGs that you shot with, for example, your Canon camera. You know the resolution of your Canon camera, so you could filter some more by increasing the minimum megapixel size. Set it to 6, for example, if you have a 6000 times 4000 resolution sensor, your photos will be that resolution. So you can skip all the tiny stuff that you won't be needing anyway. And another thing is that entropy filters out some garbage as well. So there's a number of settings that affect the quality of the recovery. So you will not get corrupt files, you will not get tiny thumbnails, you will not get duplicate files. Now the duplicate files thing is something I added recently, and I would like to demonstrate that. It works by hashing the files it detected. So it calculates a CRC32 hash for the file. It stores it in a table. Then if it detects a new file, it will again calculate the CRC32 value, compare it to the table, and if it's already in there, it will come to the conclusion it's a duplicate file. So I prepped a really simple test. You can do that here, I learned recently. Yeah, I prepped two folders on a flash drive. And the contents of the folders are identical. So each has 154 items. Get this one. And all these are identical. They're identical photos. So if all is well, rather than detecting about 300 files, JpegDigger should detect about 154. It's my E drive. I select it, and I'll just start scanning. And then we basically wait. I will speed this up, and then we'll see how many files it detects. Now you saw one corrupt file, two corrupt files. Not every type of corruption is detectable. Basically, what JpegDigger does without actually decoding the files is it goes through the file data and it looks for specific byte combinations that violate the JPEG specification. It will try to, for example, detect if there's block-sized sectors of areas of zeros or byte patterns that could indicate a bad sector. It detects the minimum amount of required JPEG markers. So it goes from FFD8FF all the way up to FFD9, which is the end of the file. and it's to recover the file, it walks the chain of JPEG markers. So this will automatically rule out that the thumbnail is detected as a separate file. It's, according to the JPEG spec, a part of the file, and JpegDigger just decodes all markers, sees it's a thumbnail, and it will just include it in the file as it was in the original file. Something that I tested as well, of course, if there are irregularities, so to speak, so things happen that violate the JPEG specification, the repair option of JpegDigger will try to correct those. So as a result, you will have a file which may not look 100%, but at least you should be able to open it using any kind of photo viewer, and then the data that's inside the file will be displayed. It may look corrupt, or it may look but of course in that case JPEG Repair alters the file slightly. So if we would have duplicate files, but one being corrupt and one being not corrupt, because JpegDigger alters the corrupt file, this will have a different hash than the duplicate file. So suppose there's some minor damage that's fixed by JpegDigger, and so the files may even look the same visually, but since the one with the minor damage is repaired, it will have a different hash, so it will not be able to detect that as a duplicate file. It will come to the conclusion, as the hashes will be different, that we have that we're dealing with different files, non-duplicate files. This is the hash, by the way. It calculates the hash. Now, what we'll see what we'll see happen, because it works. It's not the first time I tried this, of course. Once we have about 150 files, it will start detecting the second set of files, the identical files. And what you will see happen is the hash changing, but not the number of files. So that's the hash for the duplicate file, which it compares to the table of the hashes it already has. And we'll then conclude, okay, this is one we already have, so I'm going to skip it. It's going to start happening now. You see the hash change. Number of files remains the same. Preview is the last known file that we recovered or detected. Will remain the same, only the hash will keep changing. And these are all the duplicate files that are ignored. Well, if you have to go through thousands of files, it may not make a huge difference, but well, every little bit helps, I suppose. So, corrupt files not getting through for the most part. Tiny thumbnails not getting through. Of course, those are easy to filter out. Once you've recovered them, you just sort files by size, and then select everything that you deem too small to be useful. But it saves some work. And then the filtering of the duplicate files. If you compare, for example, to a photo rec, in general, JpegDigger will have will recover less files, but basically it means it will recover less rubbish. So where you in photo rec often see tiny thumbnails separated from the original files, You will not get those with JpegDigger. A lot of the corrupt files you will not get with JpegDigger. A lot of the false positives will be ignored by JpegDigger, and so now also the duplicate files will be ignored by JpegDigger. Well, it's still going, and then since I wiped this card, these are all the files that are on there. So once we get past the duplicates, the entropy bar will remain black, or color black, go from gray to black, indicating that no data is found. Not just no JPEGs, no data in general, no data at all, no data whatsoever. Still see the hash flipping, so it's still detecting those duplicate files. It should be almost done now, so. Oh, that's detecting a few. And now we're so for a few it missed the hash. The hash was slightly different. And now we get in the black area. So no data detected at all. I'm going to cancel this. And so we saw a few corrupt files previously. So if I would attempt file repair, again, since these files are binary copies and the JPEG algorithm will do the exact same repairs on the corrupt file and the duplicate corrupt file, those also should have matching CRC values. So the duplicate should also be filtered. I've tested that. Well, that's some of the advantages that are built into JpegDigger. And thank you for watching.